There we go. All right. Again, Julia, I am so happy that you are our student guest speaker from JTS here today with us to talk about your passion and your studies as a seminary student. Can you start off by telling our audience about your rich family history and how your family and outside influences has shaped your love of Judaism and study?
Absolutely. Um, my grandfather, first and foremost, was truly an inspiration to me. He went to JTS for rabbinical school, and he has such a passion for Jewish texts and learning, and it's absolutely contagious. In addition to that, my aunt also went to both Liss College, the undergraduate program at JTS, and the rabbinical school at JTS. And my great-grandfather on my mom's side was also he also went to rabbinical school at JTS. So I'm excited to be and proud to be the fourth generation at JTS. So I feel a little bit like I'm carrying on this lineage, but I did not at all go to JTS for the sake of doing that. I really wanted to come there. And originally I almost didn't want to come there because of the lineage. And I was like, no, I don't want to just go there to carry on any sort of history, but I really was excited to go to JTS, and I'm so happy that I was there, and I feel so empowered by my past generations that have been there as well.
I think that's amazing. 4 generations at one school and a very special school in New York. Tell me about your family when you moved from Texas to Birmingham and how that cemented the reason you are now also at JTS.
Absolutely. So I grew up, I've lived in Dallas, Texas longer than I've lived anywhere else. I grew up there and I lived in a very Jewish community. And I went to a Schechter school, which is affiliated with the conservative movement. And I went to my conservative synagogue and the JCC, which is where I did my Girl Scouts and my gymnastics. And I was really completely engulfed in the Jewish world. And it was definitely a bit of a culture shock moving to Alabama, as I was kind of too old to go to the day school here, and there's no Jewish high school. Um, and in some ways, it was amazing, and I was so glad to have the experience in Alabama that I did. And it also showed me how much I value my Jewish studies, and how much in some ways I missed it. And I got a lot of it from the synagogue, which I'm sure we'll get to. But I really, really knew then that I missed Jewish text study and learning, and I wanted to go back to it. And I knew then that I wanted to go to JTS. So it was really my move to Alabama that helped me solidify my interest in JTS.
Great. And with your new home in Bethel, how did that, what role did you play with the temple as a young high school student for them? Like, did you run programs with the students? What was your role here as a teacher or a leader?
Yeah, I mean, I attended our congregational school, our Hebrew school, at Bethel, and I was also a madricha for them after I completed confirmation at Bethel. And I was very involved with USY, both on a regional level, a sub-regional level, and most importantly at the chapter level. I was chapter president of USY at Bethel for multiple years. And as much as I enjoy doing programming for my peers and all of the other children at the synagogue younger than myself from, I believe, third grade through 12th grade, I helped create programming for, it really had a big impact on me. And that's where I found my Jewish community of people my age here in Birmingham, Alabama. And that was priceless to me. It kept me involved and engaged in the Jewish world. And that and the scholarships that Bethel was able to give to me in order to go to Ramah and my Ramah camp also through the conservative movement had a really big impact on me while I was here as well. It was just a safe space and a community that I could be part of and feel at home at.
Well, that is great. And let's also mention your mother, Shira, who is on the Torah Fund Committee. I mean, it's a family affair here. And I'm so very happy that the Goldbergs found their home in Alabama and Birmingham and in Temple Bethel. It is these last 2 days an amazing place to be. Let's get to your studies. Tell me how you decided your path of Jewish learning and then focus on your biblical studies. What brought you there?
Yeah, so I knew that I missed Jewish text study, and I really enjoyed my high school that I went to in Alabama, and I took Latin there because I at first was very stubborn. I didn't want to take any language other than Hebrew. I'd only ever taken Hebrew, and I was like, Latin's not a real language. I'll take Latin. And I quickly fell in love with Latin, and I took it for 5 years, like all the way then through high school, and then I continued taking it in college even. And my Latin teacher, his father is a pastor or a minister. And so my Latin teacher had interest in religious text. And because I missed Jewish text study, I was able to create an independent study with my Latin teacher where we looked at biblical texts in Latin, like Latin translations of the Tanakh of our Hebrew Bible. And I would translate them from the original Hebrew into Latin with him and then compare it with the existing Latin translations. And it was a good exercise in learning Latin and also in religious studies. And I was really fortunate that I had that opportunity. And it was through that independent study that I realized how much I enjoyed biblical studies and analyzing the Hebrew text and religious studies and really just looking closely at a text and translating. It's how I also found my love for linguistics, and I majored in linguistics at Columbia. So my area that I specialize in is at the intersection of linguistics and biblical studies, more like biblical philology, or the grammatical and just language aspects of the Hebrew Bible. And it's through my high school that I really found that love.
Uh, I am amazed. I'm sure the audience is amazed. Taking Latin, studying biblical studies, and getting the Jewish experience from the discussions you had. We talked briefly when we were together about the role you have focusing on women and the role in the Tanakh. Can you go ahead and explain to us how you see the women's role through biblical study in our Tanakh and what you would like to do with that?
Yeah, so there are many amazing scholars at JTS, including Bible scholars. And one emerging area of biblical studies is women's studies within biblical texts. While I love the language and philology aspect, I've also enjoyed taking a few classes with some of these amazing women, these scholars who study the role of women in the Tanakh. A few names that are really important that work in this field are Amy Kamenofsky and a new professor who just recently came to the seminary at Landman. And I really enjoyed taking classes with them, learning about the important role of women, looking at stories from the narrative of women that may or may not be told, whether it be via midrash, or like rabbinic interpretation, or just us and ourselves as a class using textual clues to figure out the perspective of the woman and the role that women had in the story, whether they're named or not. And just seeing the critical role that women have had in our Tanakh, and that it's not as minuscule as people make it out to be. Women had a really big role. And we too often say, yeah, women aren't named enough in the Tanakh, and there's this patriarchy that exists in the Tanakh, but they fail to look at the amazing examples of powerful women in our Tanakh and the role that even some of the less powerful women that we would traditionally look at have also had. And it's been an amazing, eye-opening experience, really.
And ask for anything better from you. How does the movement, the conservative majority movement, impact your life? And where do you see the trend for conservative majority movement, in your own opinion?
These are good questions. The conservative movement, it originated back the pre-origins of the conservative movement. It started out kind of from this positive historical movement back in Europe with Zacharias Frankel, and I know we had a seminary that was named after him, and I believe you told me it was recently changed.
Mhm.
But we acknowledge that past of our movement and the ideas that came out of this need for, we saw orthodoxy being devoid of some spirituality was his words, and that reform was being devoid of some Jewish law and halakha, and we needed to find this middle ground. And the history of the conservative movement continued to shape and change in America with important events ultimately branching off from some aspects branching off from Reform Judaism and others coming from Orthodoxy. But what it really started out as was what you mentioned earlier, this thought-based movement kind of where we had this idea of halachic pluralism, where there could be multiple right answers for Jewish law at the same time, a very rabbinic idea. And Rabbi Joel Roth, a famous rabbi in our movement who served on the Committee on Jewish Law and Standards, makes this analogy of a chessboard where the rabbis long ago would make these moves on the chessboard in order to change halakha and adapt it to fit the times. And he says that Orthodoxy basically put this glass dome over the chessboard. And while we're not being as Reform Judaism and just ignoring the chessboard in some ways and not having halakha, we're also not stopping the change in the process of Jewish law. We're continuing to play the game of chess. We're playing it according to the rules of the game, but we're still playing. And in some ways, he believes that conservative Judaism is the most authentic form of Judaism, the way that it was practiced 2,000 years ago. That conservative Judaism actually continues to understand that there's disagreements in Jewish law, and we continue to change and play the game and disagree with each other. And that means you can hold multiple ideas as true at the same time. And it's learning to live with that feeling of cognitive dissonance, that you can be right and you can be right. And it allows for this pluralistic movement where some people drive to synagogue on Shabbat and some people don't. And they're both equally valid answers at the same time, because there's multiple ways to observe halakha. And this was this new concept. In some ways, it's critical, in my opinion, to the continuation of observant and educated Judaism, to believe that there's multiple right ways of doing something. And I think that that's what allows conservative Judaism to succeed and continue. And I believe that because of that, we will see it for many years in the future. And I have a lot of hope and faith that our movement will continue. And I'll still be here supporting it. And I love this movement so much. And it means so much to me to be able to participate in an egalitarian setting, have so many rights as women, and also that I can be educated and have this observance of halakha, of Jewish law. So conservative Judaism is really, really important to me, in short.
Okay. I don't know how to even go with that. That is amazing. And I can't wait for you to teach all of us this in the coming futures. I'm going to switch a little bit, Julia, on Torah Fun and the role it's played with you and the role is played on with your other students, and how the impact of the Women's League for Conservative Judaism, as you know it at JTS, has guided you, if any.
It has been, the Torah Fund has impacted me in so many ways. One, with the Women's League Seminary Synagogue, also known as Willis. The Women's League has historically provided this prayer space that now, it was originally for women. Now all of JTS uses, it's the main prayer space. So anytime any JTS student in any of their 5 schools need to go to Shacharit or Mincha or Mariv or any service, right? Everyone's in Willis every day, 3 times a day. And it's been a wonderful resource. It's so well used and so well loved. And most importantly to my life in some ways is the new dorms. That the Women's League has so generously raised money to help fund the new dorms. And I know with the ending of the Spaces project, it's also going to help create a study space for the undergraduate dorms as well. And I lived there, and it's been such a wonderful experience being able to live in the building of JTS and have these brand new, beautiful dorms. And my experience at JTS would not have been the same without them. And I really, really appreciate it.
How do you spend your Shabbats? Where do you go when you want to be? you told me that you go on campus. Where do you go?
Yeah, in GTS, there's always this great community of undergraduate students who they'll often go to the Columbia Barnard Hillel because any undergraduate students at GTS are also students at Columbia or Barnard. So they'll often go to the Columbia Barnard Hillel for services or for dinner. But always at the end of the night, everyone ends up in the new JTS dorms in the big Moa Dome, the big space with couches. It's like a lounge, also helped funded by Willis, and we're by the Women's League, I mean. And they're playing board games, they're singing Shabbat Smiros, and it's just such a wonderful culture and atmosphere. Non-JTS students from Columbia and Barnard make their way there as well, and it becomes this hub and this home for a vibrant, observant Jewish life. People celebrating Shabbat together and just making it their own, talking, chatting, having desserts or an oneg of sorts. And we see that all throughout Shabbat. It continues. There will be people there until 2 or 3 a.m. on a Friday night. And then the next morning, people will often go to synagogue, or they'll go to either the Columbia Barnard Hillel or a local synagogue. And everyone always makes their way back again to JTS to play more board games and do more Zmiros. And we're always in the new dorms. And it's been such.
That's great. Just 2 more questions before we have our question and answer session. I'm looking at my future mirror. Where do you see your future going in the next 5 years? Where do you see yourself?
Also a great question. Well, I don't know exactly where I'm going to be or what I'm going to be doing. I know that it's going to involve learning, no matter what. I love learning, and it's something I want to continue doing throughout my life. And hopefully I'll be educating as well and helping inspire my love of learning in others. That's really important to me. I think that Jewish texts and studying our tradition is like at the crux of making meaning in our lives. And I want to help spread that same joy that I find in our texts to others.
I'm going to take your class. I'll be there. I will. I mean, you are amazing. Today, what would you like us, your audience, to take away one thing from what you've just talked about that we can take home to our affiliates about you or your studies? What's the one most important thing you want us to know?
I mean, I would charge everyone with being involved in this Jewish community of ours and challenging yourself to learn a little more. And of course, to support conservative Judaism and Women's League and all of their new projects. Maybe voting for Americas and doing things that you can help to support our movement and the future of Judaism.
That's great. Julia, I cannot be happier to have you. You are wonderful. Thank you.
Having me.
All right. We are just going to have a 5-minute Q&A from the audience. And we're going to have someone pass the mic around and taking off my glasses so I can see you. Thank you, Marcia. And we're opening the lights. Does anyone have a question for Julia? And please state your name and your sisterhood.
I'm Susan Pankowski from Nashville in West End Synagogue, and I'm the librarian there. And I want you to know that if you have not spent a great deal of time in your library there, that you have, haven't you?
I need to spend more. They have.
There you go.
Those of you who don't know JTS, in the JTS library, there is the largest collection of Hebrew manuscripts outside of Israel.
I know.
It's incredible, and I need to go see more of those manuscripts and take advantage of that library while I can. I need to spend more time there, you're right.
So I want you to know that a dear friend of ours was a rabbinical student at JTS. She spent 8 years there through many things. She was a librarian. If you give the name Teresa Snyder to anyone at JTS who is in the library, they will tell you just how much of a great resource she was. But just please, thank you so much for speaking with us. I really didn't have a question. I just wanted to shout out for the library and that you should go more.
Mhm.
I'm writing her name down.
And the certificates.
Hi, I'm Ann Greenbaum and
Okay.
I'm Ann Greenbaum from Congregation Or Hadash in Sandy Springs, Georgia. And I also serve on International Women's League board as the Israel chair. And you know, we have a Merkaz vote going on now for pluralism, to maintain pluralism and expand pluralism in Israel. Among your peer groups in Israel, do you see, and certainly the vote now is from students in JTS in the United States, that's who we vote for, but in Israel, there's votes too in other ways. Are you seeing the love for Yahadut and for Limud the way I hope it's shining on all of us right now, and I hope it's shining on your friends in Israel as well. How do you see Masorti shining on them?
Yeah. So the reality of the Masorti and conservative movement is that it is a lot more present and active in America than it is in Israel, but there are still amazing and vibrant communities in Israel. I was fortunate to spend a semester abroad in Israel my junior year, where I regularly attended a Masorti-affiliated synagogue in Jerusalem, and seeing the incredible community there that I really call my second home. I went back to visit last fall, and everyone was like, Julia, and I really, really missed it. And while I don't see myself necessarily moving to Israel, as my life and my family are here, I see the vibrancy in pluralistic and egalitarian and observant and conservative movement, like Masorti movement, Judaism, that does in fact exist there. And they're so happy and they have their communities and they're vibrant and thriving and just as committed to education and tech study and the role of women. It's exactly what I wanted to see. And like I said, that community particularly became my home. It's called Remote Zion, and it's in Givat Tzarfatit in right outside Jerusalem. And it's an incredible community. And there are many others in Jerusalem and across Israel as well.
That's great. We have one more
One
question.
last.
Yeah, I was actually going to say, in addition, about Merkaz, everybody, Merkaz, if you have not already, it's so important. And I have many friends that are serving as the representatives for Merkaz. So depending on the number of votes that we get, we'll have a certain number of seats. And there are people that serve in those seats. So like number one spot is going to Chancellor Shuli Reuven Schwartz, who's the Chancellor of JTS. And I have friends last Congress, we got 18 seats, I believe. And I have a really dear friend who's serving, this next round, he's serving as seat number 18. So as long as we get at least the same number of votes that we got last time, he will be able to serve as the representative. And I have other friends that are serving 19, 20, 21. So let's get as many votes as we can, because these are incredible people that deserve to be represented in the World Zionist Congress.
Last night I think it was there, just in the room. I think a lot of people have already heard. No, and I'm assuming that you guys.
Hey, Julia, good morning. It's Lisa Keanoff from here in Birmingham. And I was just curious, I know that I'd love to hear the perspective for you and your peers at Columbia and Barnard, how they're dealing with all the anti-Semitism.
Mm.
Look, it's definitely been present. But I have a good friend who likes to say, look, what the media portrays is the protests and the horrible anti-Semitic things that are being said. But what they don't represent and what they don't show is the incredible supportive Jewish community that we have behind all of this. And look, it's present if you seek it out. But a lot of us we know when the protests are going to be, we know how to, for the most part, avoid them. And not only has the Columbia Barnard Hillel been doing an incredible job at providing a safe space and people to talk to, JTS2 has provided so many resources. So many of our professors at both institutions have been so kind to us. And because honestly, I say this to all the time, I cannot imagine what it's like for Jews that are just at Columbia and don't also have their JTS community. For me, like the JTS community is what created this really like home and safe space where, you know, at the end of the day, I go back to like the JTS dorms or with my JTS friends, and there's none of that. For people who are Jews who are living in the Columbia dorms and are seeing it, I'm sure it's a lot more difficult, and they at least have the Hillel, and it's an incredible Hillel and a great community, and we have that as well. But really, JTS has been priceless in all of this, and it's made this so bearable and so amazing. And if I could choose to go to this program again, knowing what would happen, I would absolutely do it, and I would recommend anyone go to List College as well, despite all of the protests.
Julia, I want to thank you so much. You have been an inspiration to me, just meeting with you. I hope everyone feels a little bit more inspired of what Torah Fund does with JTS and all of our seminaries, and especially with Julia. Thank you, Julia.
Thank you so much for having me.
And that concludes our session with you. So have a wonderful day. We'll talk soon.
Thank you so much.
Bye, Julia.
Okay, we are running on overtime.